Good afternoon, CSBA, and welcome to another edition of CSBA Hoops Today. This week's edition is going to be a little bit longer than usual because it's a basketball fan's favorite month, being March, and that means March Madness is right around the corner. I hope everyone is as excited as I am because we should have a great appetizer on deck with the conference tournaments this week, and then the main course being the NCAA tournament later on this month. But first, we must cover our final regular season games and review the JUCO matchup of the week. Then, to end the podcast, we will review our conference tournaments and I will even give my early predictions as to who I have winning each tournament. So, without further ado, let's go over our lineup of games of the week from this past week. To start off this past week, we had a top 10 matchup between number 6 Houston and number 8 Kansas. Then on Tuesday, we had number 16 Michigan State traveling to Michigan in a heated rivalry game. On Wednesday, we had a top 25 matchup on tap with number 18 Mississippi State taking on number 19 South Carolina. Up next, we had the Runnin' Rebels of UNLV going to number 10 San Diego State to try and pull off an epic upset. And at the end of the week, we had number 3 Oregon looking to continue their winning ways against Washington. And then to round out the week, we had our standout JUCO matchup between Indiana A&M and Cincinnati. But we will now kick off our highlights, starting with the Cougars and Jayhawks. Number 6 Houston and number 8 Kansas was getting the month of March started off right, as Houston was looking to get the W on the road in Kansas. Both teams shot pretty identical from the field, with Houston shooting 46% and Kansas 49%. Houston's bench outscored the Jayhawks by 10, but the Cougars committed 13 turnovers and were unable to come back from the Jayhawks' largest deficit of 16 points at one point and were unable to get the victory in Kansas. It ended up being Kansas 81 and Houston 74, with your player of the game being Cornelius Massey, who ended with 21 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 steals to lead the Jayhawks to victory at home. Up next, we have the highlights for the rivalry in Michigan with the Spartans versus the Wolverines. This rivalry game certainly did not disappoint in Ann Arbor as Michigan State shot an outstanding 63% from the field, but Michigan also hit 10 threes as well as shooting an outstanding 58% from the field. Michigan State even out-rebounded Michigan 30 to 19. And just to pile even more on, the Spartans even held a 17-point lead at one time. But even with all of that said and done, Sparty turned the ball over 10 times and Michigan converted that into 19 points, which ended up giving them the victory and pulling off the epic upset. Your player of the game ended up being Doc Boone Jr. for the Wolverines, who had a massive 21 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists to give Michigan a much needed win at the end of the year. The third matchup of the week is up next as we have a top 25 showdown between number 18 Mississippi State and number 19 South Carolina. This matchup ended up being all Mississippi State. Both teams shot very well from the field, with both being above 54%, but the Bulldogs ended up having a whopping 64 points in the paint and out-rebounded the Gamecocks by 20, 43 to 23. At one point in the game, Mississippi State held a lead as large as 24 points, which is extremely impressive on the road. In the end, the number 18 Bulldogs came out victorious, with your final being 98 to 84. The player of the game ended up being none other than Alexander McQuinn of the Bulldogs. They ended with nearly a double-double with 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists. Coming up next, we have UNLV looking to get an upset over the Aztecs of San Diego State on the road. In this next matchup, the Runnin' Rebels came in fully prepared to win on the road and take down a top 10 team in the San Diego State Aztecs. Both teams made 8+ three-pointers, and UNLV even shot an insane 16 of 16 from the free throw line. And at one point in the game, UNLV had San Diego State on the ropes, being up 13, but the Aztecs never gave up and put on quite the performance in front of their home fans, and they completed the comeback and beat the feisty Runnin' Rebels at home. Your final score ended up being San Diego State 85 and UNLV 82.
Ryan Winley ended up coming up huge with a double-double consisting of 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists to lead his team to victory. To end the college week, let's review the matchup between number 3 Oregon and Washington. This matchup ended up being a little closer than some may have expected here in the CSBA Nation. The Huskies certainly didn't go down without a fight, as they shot nearly 50% from the field and hit 8 three-pointers, but the Ducks ended up shooting an impressive 61% on the road and proved why they are the number 3 team in the nation. They outscored Washington by 20 in the paint, but the game really never got completely out of hand, as Oregon's biggest lead was only 14. But in the end, the Ducks came out on top on the road and are looking forward to conference play and March Madness. The final ended up being 88-77, and Oregon finishing the regular season at an impressive 7-1. Oregon's player of the game was DeAndre Burner, who was all over the court with 17 points, 2 rebounds, and 5 assists. The final highlight segment of the night is your JUCO matchup of the week, featuring Indiana A&M and Cincinnati. These two JUCO teams put on quite a show for the CSBA fans, as it was extremely tight throughout the entire ballgame. Both teams were nearly identical in a lot of categories, such as field goal percentage in the 40s, both making 4 threes, and both making 4 free throws. It ultimately came down to the second chance points, which Cincinnati had 6 compared to Indiana A&M's 0, and out-rebounding A&M 35-22. In the end, Cincinnati just seemed to want it more and came away with the victory on their home floor by 2 points, 48-46. Both teams have been very even throughout the JUCO season, with A&M ending at 2-2 and Cincinnati at 3-1. Your player of the game was none other than Dalla Dimes, who ended up with 9 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. And now, the moment that everyone has been waiting for. The conference tournaments are beginning this week, and I thought I would give a high-level overview of each conference and my predictions for each, starting with the ACC tournament. The Duke Blue Devils are your number 1 seed, Virginia Tech number 2, North Carolina number 3, and Georgia Tech number 4. In the end, I have the final being Duke versus UNC to renew their rivalry once more, but I ultimately have Duke prevailing and staying hot going into the NCAA tournament. The next conference should be a great one, which is the Big Ten Conference. Your seeds break down as follows. Number 1, Indiana. Number 2, Iowa. Number 3, Michigan. And number 4, Michigan State. The way I expect it to break down is Indiana facing Iowa in the final, and I have number 2, Iowa, defeating the Hoosiers to take home the crown. The third conference tournament is none other than the Big 12 Conference. You have the Red Raiders as your number 1 seed, the Kansas Jayhawks at number 2, the Cougars of Houston at number 3, and Texas at number 4. CSBA Nation should definitely pay attention to this tournament because we have yet another matchup between Houston and Kansas. For me, I have Texas Tech and Kansas making the final, and as much as I want to pick the Jayhawks, I just can't, as Texas Tech will prove to be too strong and take the crown in the Big 12. Up next, we have the Big East Conference with St. John's representing as the number 1 seed, Providence your number 2 seed, Marquette the number 3 seed, and the number 4 seed being the Villanova Wildcats. I'm looking for the final to be St. John's versus Marquette, and I know these two teams just faced each other on March 3rd with Marquette winning by 15, but I think the Johnnies will take this one and win the Big East. As we continue on here, we have our SEC tournament up next. The Wildcats of Kentucky are the number 1 seed, number 2 is Mississippi State, number 3 the Gamecocks of South Carolina, and number 4 the Tennessee Volunteers. I believe the final will be Kentucky versus Mississippi State, with the Wildcats coming out on top and proving why they are one of the best teams in the CSBA heading into the March Madness. Only 3 tournaments left to go, and this one being the WCC tournament. The Aztecs of San Diego State are the 1 seed, C-Web's Gonzaga Bulldogs as the 2 seed, UNLV your 3 seed, and Arizona State as the 4 seed. As much as I would like to pick the upset with the Sun Devils defeating San Diego State, I just can't and I will not. And I have Gonzaga beating UNLV which ultimately leads to Gonzaga being your WCC Conference Tournament champions, defeating the San Diego State Aztecs. Up next, we have the exciting Pac-12, with Oregon as the number 1 seed, Colorado the number 2 seed, Washington the 3 seed, and UCLA your number 4 seed. I think this is Oregon's tournament to lose, as I have them defeating UCLA, and then Washington defeating Colorado, and then in the final I have Oregon taking the W, as I expect them to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. And last but certainly not least, the CUSA tourney. The Shockers of Wichita State are your number 1 seed, Ohio the 2 seed, Notre Dame representing the 3 seed, and Murray State as your 4 seed. The two teams I have facing off in the final are Wichita State versus Notre Dame, and I have the Shockers taking home the trophy and carrying that momentum into March in the NCAA tournament. Well, folks, that will pretty much put a wrap on this week's CSBA Hoops Today. I really hope you all enjoyed the show, and I hope you are as excited as I am for the conference tournaments and for March Madness. Let us know who you have winning the tournaments in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to our channel and like the video. And with that, CSBA, I'm out, and I hope you all enjoy the badness. See you in the streams.